And we're back. It's the year 2021 officially. Today we're looking at America Moves to the City. So, hold on to your hats. Urban Frontier. We're gonna triple and quadruple and quintuple our population pretty quick. Let's see, it tripled from 1870 to 1900. That's a lot of kids. Greater than a million cities with greater than a million. So you got New York, you got yourself Philadelphia, you got yourself Chicago. Today, if we say, how many cities in the United States and America have 1 million people in them? Well, gosh, there's quite a few. Oklahoma City and its surrounding areas, Edmond, Moore, Norman, etc., probably right at 1 million people. New York City has what, 8 million people? That's a lot of people. Let's see, the dawn of skyscrapers, here at the end of the 19th century. We talked about the Bessemer process and how steel is now the way to go. And then other reasons that people are going to come into the cities. The centripetal pull. Ooh, centripetal pull. Do you remember that from AP what was that? Human geography. Centripetal brings you in and centrifugal kicks you out. So the centripetal pull of the cities. Let's see, we have electricity. That's pretty important. Mostly we're talking about electricity for these electrical, these cars going back and forth. The trolleys, couldn't think of the word. The electric trolleys. Why else would you come to the city? Indoor plumbing. It seems like that's pretty important. All right, so indoor plumbing. One of my favorite books. I'm going to go off on a tangent here. So you can go ahead and skip for the next 5 minutes unless you want to learn a lot about toilets. Ready? Go ahead and hit the skip button. Okay, if you're still with me, you want to learn about toilets. So one of my favorite series of books growing up was called The Great Brain. And it was there's 4 or 5 or 6 books. It had the narrator was John Fitzgerald. I think that was the author too. And he's a little kid. He lived in Utah in the 1880s and with a Mormon family. And so he was the youngest son. There were 3 sons. The middle son was named Tom, and he was very, very, very clever. And so they called him the Great Brain. Well, anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the scenes in the series is that the father of the 3 boys, he decides he's going to install one of these brand new, newfangled indoor toilets, and everybody in the Mormon community came over to the house, and they were like, "Ooh, are you sure? Because once that starts to smell, what are you going to do about it?" And the father was like, "No, it's the water level will keep the smell from," and so yeah. Anyway. The toilet was improved by a gentleman by the name of Thomas Crapper. So Mr. Crapper, in the 1880s and 1890s, he had 9 different patents when it came to improving the toilet, including the ball cock. So the ball cock is the little, when you take the lid off the back end, the little floaty thing that keeps the little flapper thing going. Yeah. Okay. And he invented the U-turn, so when you flush instead of the S-turn. Okay, and now you're like, whoa, the Crapper, Thomas Crapper, that's his real name, so that's why no, probably not. It's kind of one of those mystical, mythological tales, anecdotal tales. No, possibly another reason that we call it the Crapper or crap is because the Dutch word krappen means to cut out or to excise, to separate, and the French word crappe is like offal or chaff or garbage or something you don't want, and so to cut out the stuff you don't want. And so the first time in literature that the restroom, the toilet, was referred to as the crapper was actually in 1840, and that was just 10 years after Thomas Crapper was born, so it probably wasn't named after a 10-year-old. Anyway, I was about to say, that's just Dr. Jones was talking a load of crap there. But let's move on, shall we? Oh, also telephones. Alexander Graham Bell. Pretty important. Anything else? Oh, hey, waste disposal. Waste disposal. What are you going to do with all that? New immigration. To immigrate or to immigrate? That is the question. Remember, to immigrate with an I means to come into a country. So you're an immigrant. You're coming in. To emigrate with an E means that you're leaving a country. And so if you are, I guess technically you're both at the same time. It just depends on what point of view. Ooh, look, there's an Einsteinian reference right there. It depends on the relative position of the observer, whether you're an emigrant with an E or an immigrant with an I. Look at me teaching some science. There you go. America Fever. Hey, come to America, and you too can be a Horatio Algier success story. We're going to get to him in a second. Okay. Oh, but you know, there are people who are not big fans of immigrants with an I. And so we're going to have some political cartoons here from Judge, what do I want to say this? A magazine that political magazine. So here we have a pretty famous one here. The inevitable result of the American working man of indiscriminate immigration. And so you have the American working man sitting there with his wife and children in the background. He's sitting at the table, and the evil, awful immigrant is coming behind him and stealing his bread and apparently lump of butter. Man, that's a big old thing of butter. And then over here on the other side, we've got the Statue of Liberty looking over his shoulders, and we've got these boats down here, and they're dropping these immigrants off onto her island. And she's not very happy about that. Other reactions to the new immigration. All right, so we've got these immigrants that are coming in, primarily Catholic immigrants, primarily from England. And what are we going to do with them? Let's see. When the government did not address the immigrants, somebody's got to take care of them. We covered this in the last video. In some of the big cities like New York City, the immigrants, they wouldn't have a place to go. They wouldn't have a job to work at. They wouldn't have food to eat. And so who's going to take care of them? The bosses would. So we talked about Boss Tweed, who ran New York City there for a while. And so what would the bosses do? They would set up the immigrants in housing. They would set them up with a job. They'd set them up with food. And all they want in return is, your vote. That seems a little smarmy, right? I'll pay you a job if you vote for the Democrats, or you vote for the Republicans, or you vote for the Independents. Wow. Fortunately, in the year 2021, we don't do that. Like, for example, it would be weird if somebody were to say, hey, you know what? If hypothetically people in, I'll pick a hypothetical state, Georgia. If Georgia voted for a hypothetical group, let's say, I'm flip a coin, we'll say the Democrats. If Georgia votes for the Democrats for Senate, then everybody's going to get $2,000 per month until COVID is over. So vote for the Democrats. Hypothetically. Right? Now this stuff doesn't go on anymore. Right? Moving on. Oh, I love this political cartoon. So here in the center, we have the big guy in the center. He is the immigrant, and everybody has little cards that they're holding that kind of explains their position and what they think about this guy and his wife over there on his right shoulder. And so on his case, it says 1 million immigrants with an I came into the United States in the past 12 months. Okay, and so we have the people around him who are either pro or anti this immigrant. So if we start on the very far edge here, the guy in the cool little hat there, he is the average citizen, and he says on his little card, he says, oh no, this guy, he's a menace. And you look up here at Uncle Sam, and Uncle Sam's card says, he is brawn and muscle for my country. And then you have down here, this guy in here, who's bending over, he says, he gives me cheap labor. And he represents the construction. You come across over here, and the baker, he cheapens. What does it say? Oh, he's the workman. He cheapens my labor. He takes our jobs. And if you go up to the guy in the top hat up here, I can't figure out my finger right there. He represents, it says the statesman, so the government, and he's a puzzle to me. You don't know what to do. And then you have the guy with the giant needle, who represents obviously the well, today we'd say the CDC. He says he brings diseases. And then the very far end over here, the politician, and he votes. He makes votes for me. So pros and cons from various, what would we call those? Federalist 10, what do we call them? Factions. Thank you very much. Good job, Dr. Jones. Various factions of society and how they approach what they think about immigrants. Again, thank goodness in 2021, we're all settlement houses. All right, new topic. Settlement houses. So it's easy. A settlement house. So we're going to have the. All right, use your words. Use your words. You can do this. As the cities expand and we start to have slum areas, the poor areas, there are groups of people, specifically women, that will come in, or generally women, who are going to come in and try to help out the poor. And so they're going, poor, that sounded kind of British there, the poor, are going to help out the poor. And there's a more flat American accent, the poor. We're going to help out the less, the poor. They're going to build. They're going to have these settlement houses, and so today we would call them. These settlement houses are the front runners of the YMCA. Did I get that right, or is it C that way? The YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, and so the YMCA, and so today you can go down to the YMCA and get a nice shower and a hot meal and a place to sleep, and you pick up basketball. So here at the settlement houses, these were places that the people in the lesser well-to-do areas, they could go to these houses, these buildings, and they could pick up food. They could pick up. They could learn skills and tradecraft. They could go to classes for free, and so there'd be like professors from the local universities or local colleges would come in sometimes and would teach a class on history or literature for free. And so awesome, right? The big famous one was called the Hull House, and it was in Chicago, led by Jane Addams. And so there's a picture of Jane. Picture of Jane up there talking with her kids. The Hull House, very famous. Lots of. It started off with this building and then ended up like encompassing like 9 buildings, like the entire block. They had lots of things going on. They even had their own little theater group that would perform plays by very famous American playwrights. Very, very cool. Again, the front runners of the YMCA and other places like this. So, awesome. Also, a way to spread Christianity, right? And so, hey, come to a free class, come get a free meal, come get a place to stay for a week, and let me tell you about Jesus. And so, there you go. Now, Jane Addams, interestingly enough, the leader of the most famous of these places, the Hull House, she was actually let's see, what we call that, a secular humanitarian, secular humanism, and so she was more, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Wait, is that right? Yes, and then, but not necessarily Jesus style, more Confucius, or just being a nice person, secular humanism. All right. Not everybody was welcome. We've talked about the Chinese Exclusion Act. We did that one. Man, Man, my words are just not working today. Sorry, guys. I would edit it all out, but I'll be too lazy to do that. So, we talked about the Chinese being excluded back in the previous film video. And so let's see, right, 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act, no Chinese immigrants for the next 10 years. And then, as you recall, we're not actually going to let the Chinese come into America until like 1943. Let's see, worried that whites would become a minority, the American Protective Association, the APA, is formed in 1887 and says, we don't like Catholics. Woo! In 1882, Congress, okay, now what, look at this one. In 1882, Congress has a rule that deports criminals back to their home country. Think about that, right? So if you are an immigrant and you come over here and you cause problems and you get thrown in jail, no, we're just going to kick you out back to your original country. So if you're coming in from random country, trying to think when this would not be politically incorrect, Liechtenstein. So if you're coming from Liechtenstein and you cause problems over here, we're going to kick you back to Liechtenstein. Man, that's an interesting idea. I wonder if any of the members of Congress, are watching this video. Hey, look at that. Literary Act, 1917, the old Literacy Act for immigrants. How do you keep people from coming into your borders? Well, you start putting down rules, and if you make them have to read, specifically maybe even in English, a language they don't speak, we've already talked about how people suppress your rights. Another political cartoon or two. Here we have, this is Lady Liberty, or Justice, Lady Liberty. She's cutting off the long, what do we call that? Anyway, I was going to say the ponytail, but it's called a rat tail. It kind of looks like a rat tail on that, of the Chinese person. And here we have Uncle Sam, and he's kicking the Chinese back to China. Shall we have Chinese? No, no, no. Our text makes an interesting statement where it says, when you get a whole bunch of people together, you put them into a city, there's much greater chance. I'm paraphrasing here. It's much greater chance that you're gonna break some of the commandments. If there are more people in a group together, more chance to break the commandments. The 10 Commandments, right? And so you think of murder and adultery and theft and all the others. Coveting thy neighbor and not honoring your mom and dad and the Sabbath day, and I'm missing like 4 of them. But watch, I'll probably come up with them as I go down through this slide. Protestant churches are going to suffer here as people are getting together in the cities and the immigrants are coming over because we have more Catholics coming in. So the Protestants are going to have an issue with this. Catholics and Jews were gaining strength. All right. So we are going to have some some preachers are going to come in, and they're going to specifically target this the new big cities like Dwight Lyman Moody, Protestant preacher who's going to preach kindness, and he's got a couple quotes up here. The first one here, he says, "The Bible will keep you from sin, or sin will keep you from the Bible." And that is today's Bible lesson. Oh no, we got another one or two. Now, all right, here we go. Ready? Our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at something that doesn't really matter. You shouldn't be afraid of failure. You should be afraid of succeeding at something that doesn't really matter. Oof. As I sit here and talk to an imaginary audience. I cracked myself up. Okay, what else? Hey, in 1890 there were 150 different denominations. religious denominations. So you got your Baptist, your Free Will Baptist, your Southern Baptist, your Methodist, your United Methodist. There's 5. I got to get to 145 more of them. You got your Church of Christ. You got your okay, wait, no, actually some of them we didn't have those yet in 1850, 1890. Oh yeah, most of them. Okay, moving on. Hey, speaking of religion, Darwin. We're going to do more Darwin when we get to the 1920s and the Scopes trial. The Scopes monkey trial. You're going to enjoy that. It was at the 30s. Oh, goodness. Darwin disrupts the churches. So Darwin, now he's from England. He's not an American, but he's going to write this book called On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. And it's going to disrupt a lot of people because he basically says that all animals come from lower life forms, that we evolve into higher life forms. And so some people are going to take that and run with it and say, oh, Darwin says we came from monkeys, and or Darwin says we did this, and Darwin says, which he didn't really say that, but depending on how you interpret it, right? And so he's going to cause some issues. And so the religious, specifically the very conservative religious right, is going to denounce Darwin. And so because they're going to say, no. On the 6th day, God created man in his own image. And there you go. And then the secular humanists, pro-Darwin Christians are going to go, well, yeah, but let's define day, right? How long is a day to God? Okay, modernists apply to Darwin. Look, his handwriting is awful. It's almost as bad as mine. Do you remember the finch, the beaks of the different birds? When doing that biology class and trying to pick up the different things with the chopsticks. See? I know it goes on in other classes, and you're thinking, no, wait, we didn't do that. And I was like, oh, maybe I did that in the 80s. I don't know. Education. Hey, here's an idea. Some of the taxes that people are paying, you put that into education, and you have public high schools, and you have public elementary schools. And then everybody can get an education. Huh. Look at that. And then you can form normal schools, because if you have public high schools and public elementary schools, then you need normal schools. And notice normal is in quotation marks, and now you have to ask yourself, what does the word normal mean when it's applied to schools? Does anybody know? I'll wait. Go ahead, Google it. You got like 3 seconds. I know, you just looked it up and you're like, what? A normal school is a school for teachers. That's right. So if you go to school to be a teacher, which is kind of weird, it's really weird, then that school is called a normal school. And here we have a picture of a normal school. In fact, it says right here, the Territorial Normal School of Oklahoma, which was established in 1890. Today we call it UCO. Some of you are like, wait, like UCO, like down the road UCO over there in Edmond? That's right. It was a normal school, which means it was a school for teachers. And today, by the way, you can still get a teaching certificate at, UCO. Okay. Is that enough about that? Let's move on. In 1880s and 1890s, brought new strength to the private Catholic parochial schools, which were becoming a major part of of our country. So we're talking about the Catholic schools, right? So let's see, the Notre Dames of the world. If we stay here in Oklahoma, we're talking about the Bishop Kellys and the Cassidys and the Mount St. Mary's and the Bishop McGinnis's. What did I say? I said Kelly. Well, there's Bishop Kelly up in Tulsa. Bishop McGinnis. The Catholic schools. And then down here we said crowded cities generally provided better educational facilities. Generally provided better educational facilities than the old one-room, the old one-room rural schoolhouse. So we think about the early 1800s, and you had the one room schoolhouse and the one teacher that had grades kindergarten through 8th grade or 9th grade, and that one teacher taught all the subjects for all the kids, and could I do that? Oh, definitely not like kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. I'd have to shoot myself. But 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, could I do all 4? I could do history and math and science, English. Can't. Oh, that'd be way too much of me having me for 4 or 5 or 6 hours a day. uh, you know, but if you're teaching all those different things together, sorry, I'm about to go off on a tangent. Please note, skip ahead for 1 minute if you don't want to hear the tangent. So if you teach all the disciplines together, then you can do big units like back about, I don't know, 18, 19, 20 years ago. In the middle school, we built a giant Martian space station in the middle school commons. And when I say giant, we're talking like it was half the size of a basketball court. And what we did was a giant, I've got this on video somewhere, pieces of plastic that we made into giant Coke cans like 8 feet tall and about 3 feet or 4 feet diameter. And we sealed them up with duct tape, and then we connected tubes to them. And we had, 5, 6, 7 of those pods. We put them all together, connected it to a couple of giant fans, blew air, so it was a giant balloon, and then we put different stations inside the pods. We had teachers from the rest of the 6th grade, they came out and then they did like the constitution of Mars, and somebody did Mars microbes, and somebody did Martian math, and it was pretty crazy. And and we got on the news, and that was very awesome. And then, let's see, what was it about? So we started, that was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and about 11 o'clock, some of the kids were coming out, and they're like, it's kind of hard to breathe in there. Why? Because everybody was inside this giant balloon that didn't have any access, and so all the oxygen was being sucked up. And so, yes, that's right. That was the year that we almost had 50 kids pass out from oxygen deprivation inside a giant balloon that we built. Don't you wish you had me for 6th grade? We did some pretty crazy things, including the pumpkin throwing catapult. Okay, where were we? And now, gosh, that was longer than a minute, sorry. And now we're back. Booker T. Washington, also a high school in Oklahoma. So Booker T. and let's see, and two other African Americans here. Booker T. Washington. So he's going to be one of the leaders that says, "Hey, African Americans, we need to get off our butts, and we need to be self-aware. We need to help ourselves get out of this economic miasma, this pit that we're in. And nobody's going to help us, so we need to do it ourselves." And so that was Booker T. Washington pushing for African Americans to become economically equal with the whites, not necessarily social, but economically equal. And Booker T. Washington's idea was, once you have money, then people will start respecting you, and therefore then you will become socially equal. We have the flip side of that. We have Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, and he's going to argue, no, that's accommodationist. That is, if you continue to, Booker T. Washington was accommodationist, if you continue to do that and not fight for equality in a social realm, you will never become equal in an economic realm. So W.E.B. Du Bois argued we need to have legislation, and we need to have societal change first before we have economic change. And so Dr. Du Bois, he founded in 1910, right, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. And that is still going strong today. In the middle of these two guys, we have George Washington Carver. And so Dr. Carver is, he taught at the Tuskegee Institute. I'm going to say Alabama. Might be missing. Georgia? Sorry. I meant to look that up. Anyway, in 1896, and he is going to become worldwide famous for his studies, primarily focused on the simple legume. That's right. It's just a fun word to say. Legume. We would say peanut. All right. So this guy, hey, go stop the video right now. Go look up this guy and all the stuff he did with the peanut. It was pretty crazily amazing. All right, are you back yet? Are you back? Okay, good. Moving on. We are most of the way through this, by the way. The Ivy League, right? Female black colleges arose after the Civil War. Excellent. In 1862, the Morrill Act is going to be passed, and so we're going to take tax money, federal tax money, we're going to push it out to the states, and we're going to form some public colleges, public universities. And then that worked out so well that the Hatch Act is going to come out in 1887 that's going to push for public colleges that are primarily agricultural colleges. So there you go. Great, awesome. Millionaires and tycoons are going to funnel money into these programs, and we are going to suddenly have a whole bunch of universities pop up out of existence that didn't exist before. So, yay, education! And then, just as a side note, Johns Hopkins University is founded in 1872, is going to be the first major university to have a really nice graduate school. And guys, today, if you get accepted to Johns Hopkins, you get to go to Johns Hopkins Medical, or that kind of stuff. Or if you're published at Johns Hopkins, you too can become famous. Especially if you're published twice by Johns Hopkins. That's right, twice. Oh, hey, you recognize this campus? This is a Morrill Act campus. It's up there in Stillwater. And then this one here, that one. That is this. I think this is a Hatch. We'll look on the map on the next one. And this one is located in Langston, and it's called Langston. All right. I know you can't see the little dots, so here we go. We're looking at 1862, and so this is the Morrill Act, and so these are all the colleges, or some of the colleges that were, well, maybe all the colleges that were all thrown together. So here we go. OSU, University of Arkansas, Texas A&M, University of Florida, Mississippi State, LSU, Clemson, Purdue, Cornell, Pennsylvania State, Michigan State, Ohio State University. So, some, colleges you've heard of. And then, let's see, Northern Marianas College, the University of Guam, and the American Samoa Community College. Those were all founded at the same time. And then we have the Hatch Act in 1890, and we have Langston and Prairie View and Southern University A&M and South Carolina State, and you see there. And then in 1994, just because we're going to throw out something new, in 1994 they had kind of a resurgence of that, and so you see a whole bunch of brand new Native American colleges. And here in Oklahoma, the College of the Muskogee Nation. And so you see Native American colleges here, a lot of in New Mexico, and then up here, a lot of Native American colleges up there. All right. So, good for the Morrill Act and the Hatch Act. The appeal of the press. The Library of Congress was officially established in 1897. Now, did we have a Library of Congress before? Yes, we had a bunch of books held in the Capitol building. And then, of course, we know in 1814, and the British came in, and they burned Washington to the ground, and well, most of the ground. And then, of course, the tornado came through and saved the day. But unfortunately, they burned the Library of Congress. And then we know that a couple years later, let's see, maybe it's just 1815, that Congress came back and said, "Oh man, our library's gone. We need to buy a new library." So they bought Thomas Jefferson's personal library of 6,487. I think that's right. Somebody's going to look it up here in a second, but 6,487 books, and so he started his personal collection became the Library of Congress, and then in 1850 they had another fire, destroyed a lot of his books. But then eventually 1897 we're going to have the current, the beginning of the current iteration of the Library of Congress, and that's going to help because the linotype machine, which is a much faster way to print stuff than the Gutenberg press. Next, speaking of the press, Joseph Pulitzer. So Joseph Pulitzer is going to be the editor-in-chief of some newspapers. And what is he famous for? Well, today, if we talk about Pulitzer, we're talking about the Pulitzer Prize. So the Pulitzer Prize, there's 21, every year there's 21 Pulitzer Prizes given. 20 of them are given for achievements in literature, or there's 2 for photography, there's 1 for the news, hard-hitting news, and there's 1 for op-ed, and there's 1 for creative writing, and so the cash award is $15,000. I know you're like, ooh, the Pulitzer Prize. It's only $15,000, but still, it's still $15,000. And then the other award of the 21 is you get a gold medal, and it's for, I don't know what it's for, citizenship or something like that. Anyway, I find it ironic that Pulitzer Prize is named after Pulitzer because he was actually kind of the forefather of fake news. Wow, I'm going to talk about that in a second. So the prize for the best writing is named after the guy who's came up with fake news. Ugh. I guess this isn't the first time. You've got the Nobel Prize, right? The Nobel Prize, which by the way, that's like $1 million. But the Nobel Prize, which includes the Nobel Peace Prize. And of course, we know the Nobel Prize is named after Alfred Nobel. And what is he famous for? He invented dynamite. Right, that's right, the Nobel Prize. Peace Prize named after the guy who invented dynamite. Anyway, the Pulitzer, named after the guy for best writing, named after the guy for fake news. Characteristics, by the way, we call fake, back then we call it yellow journalism, and we probably still call it yellow journalism. We're going to talk about that in journalism class, if you're in my journalism class. So how do you know it's fake news? Characteristics of yellow journalism. 1, you have these huge headlines in print. So when you hit the, I was going to say, when you open up the newspaper, no, when you click on CNN.com or FoxNews.com or MSNBC.com or whatever, and you have a huge headline, and what is it doing? It's distracting you from the actual, the actual article, and they want you to get all the information from just reading the headline, which sometimes that's not very good. Often of minor news. Many pictures or imaginary drawings, that'll get you in trouble. Use of faked interviews. So I met this guy who shall remain nameless. No, you didn't. You're making the whole thing up. Misleading headlines and false information from so-called experts. How do you become an expert? You just call yourself an expert. Well, unless you're in a court of law, and then you have to be voir dired, and then that becomes a whole situation with a cross-examination attorney, and woo! Ask me about that sometime. Okay, and then dramatic sympathy for the underdog against the system, and emotional words and symbols and scare tactics. Oh, that person used a semicolon. Good for them. That wasn't me. I copied that from that. William Randolph Hearst built up a chain of newspapers starting with the San Francisco Examiner in 1887. He's also going to be fake news. And the AP, the Associated Press, founded in the 1840s, is going to still be going today. We've got 15 minutes, and then I'll be done. 16, 17 minutes. Starting in the late 1800s, women are going to get their act together. They're going to start organizing. They're going to say, hey, what are we doing? We're not just going to be sitting around having kids and doing dishes. No, we don't. No, we want to go out and become members of society and become constructive members of society. And how do we do that? With the man suppressing us. So you form groups like in 1890, the National American Woman Suffrage Association. Remember, suffrage is voting rights. Let's see. Feminist Charlotte Perkins Gilman calls upon women to abandon their dependent status and contribute to society. The suffrage movement is going to... Oh, man. The suffrage movement in 1890, by the way, if you were African American, you couldn't be a part of that. The Civil War had been over for 25 years. That's okay, because Ida B. Wells, she said, well, I'll form my own. And so she formed the National Association of Colored Women in 1896. So good for her. Here we go. You're going to like this one. Jacob and Becca, or women's rights. And so you have the lady, so you have the guy, and he is, he's taking care of the kids, right? He's in the stroller. And she's behind him, and she says, "No seat from me, sir, without my pets." And so she's got her stick, and she's about to beat him over the head. And the ladies back behind her are like, "Oh, go it, Lydia. Go it, Lydia." And bravest of women. And so there you go. And then the title of the political cartoon is "Keep Up Your Pecker," because she's pecking with the stick. But the R is in parentheses, so it also says "Keep up, you pecker." So it's just because it's funny. That's funny. Speaking of Dr. Seuss. You think Dr. Seuss was just, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, or the Cat in the Hat, or the Lorax, or the... Oh, you don't know Dr. Seuss. When we get to World War II cartoons, woo! Anyway, here's Carrie Nation. And Carrie Nation with her hatchet and riding on the Dr. Seussian camel and talking about prohibition. Nope, let's not jump ahead. Let's do the slide first. It says, liquor consumption increased during the late 1800s. So more people were getting drunk. Why is that? Well, there's no internet. Plus, we had extra food. You got extra food, which means you have food that you can mash up. And if you can mash it up and add a little sugar to it. I'm not telling you how to make alcohol, but the point is, you can make alcohol pretty easy. The national prohibition. Okay, so prohibition is talking about alcohol. And temperance is talking about not drinking alcohol. So the National Prohibition Party was created in 1869. The Women's Christian Temperance Union was created in 1874. Then we're also going to have the Anti-Saloon League. Convince states to ban... That should not say banned. That should say ban with no D. States to ban the sale of alcohol. Here we have the advertisement up here. Vote, and we're talking about the county or the state. Should we vote for the county to be wet or dry? A wet county is someplace where you can buy alcohol. A dry county is someplace you cannot. So wet or dry. And the big, strong guy who makes a lot of money off alcohol says, "Oh, vote wet for my sake." And the lady with the 3 kids says, "Vote dry for mine. Shall the mothers and children be sacrificed to the financial greed of the liquor traffic? Vote dry." And there you go. And so, not to give you a spoiler or anything, but in 1919, the 18th Amendment was passed to the Constitution of the United States, and it said the United States is going to be a dry country, and it was illegal to distribute, manufacture alcohol in the United States of America for several years. Anyway, Carrie Nation, and so Carrie Nation, she's kind of like the poster child. She's an older lady, and she's very anti-saloon. And the stories would be that she would go through Kansas and with her hatchet, and she'd walk into these bars. And if people were in the bars illegally drinking, and she's talking about they're not illegally drinking, she was in the 1890s, but if she was in there, and she would talk about the demon rum, and she would take her axe and go to town on the liquor bottles. And so she was called, her name is Carrie Nation, and so there's crazy Carrie Nation with her hatchet going around and American history. That's great. Post-war popular fiction. So we're going to have more and more books being written, and we have the dime novels. In fact, I think it says 10-cent dime novel, right? The dime novels. Go down to your local Walmart, which isn't going to exist for another 100 years, but go down to your local Walmart and pick up these books for 10 cents. And so they were serial. A lot of them were serial books, which means that they'd have the same characters. And we had westerns. Westerns were really big, and so you could have your favorite western sheriff or whatever, and he would catch the bad guy in the book after about 90 pages, and then you'd go buy the next one for whatever. And there you go. So dime novels. General Lewis Wallace is going to write a novel called Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, which is going to attempt to refute Darwin. And then that's going to become a Academy Award-winning movie. Hey, Horatio Algier, I think I mentioned his name, I think, yeah, like at the very beginning of this thing, was a Puritan New Englander, somebody from New England, who wrote more than 100 volumes of juvenile fiction featuring the newsboys. And so the guys, the little kids, the 8-year-old, 9-year-old stand on the corner with the newspapers, like, hey, read all about it, get your news, read it, that kind of stuff. And he started writing this stuff in 1866. And so today we have the Horatio Alger Award. What do we call that? Scholarship. Horatio Alger's books were all about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, which is a phrase, an old person phrase, which means that, like Booker T. Washington says, you're on your own, go out there and, self-help and do it yourself, and come on, you can do it. And so pull yourself out of the slum area. And so here's Horatio Alger, and he's got these little newsboys, and some of them are going to become successful. They're going to take over the businesses, and they're going to grow up, and then little Orphan Annie kind of stuff. And so we have the scholarship, the Horatio Alger Scholarship, for students who go to lesser economic social schools. That you could get the Horatio Alger Scholarship. So some of you need to pause this video right now and maybe look that up, because if you happen to be going to a particular high school that you could apply for that. All right, moving on. Hey, we had some pretty good American writers at the time. Mark Twain. Hey, Mark Twain. What is he famous for? Oh, well, obviously Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer, but Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Oh, that's an excellent book. You need to read that one. The Celebrated Jumping Frog in Calaveras County. That's a pretty fun little short story. But yeah, Huck Finn and Mark Twain. I think that's in your readings this week. I don't know. We'll find out. Henry James, Stephen Crane. Oh, Stephen Crane is going to write the Red Badge Courage. Jack London. You probably have already read something from him. Jack London, he wrote The Call of the Wild. He wrote White Fang. He wrote a lot of stuff up there in Alaska. Okay. You can read that if you want. Artistic triumphs, music and portrait painting increase in popularity. So all these famous portraits, right, of people that I don't know who they are. And then actually, I do know a couple of these. Thomas Edison, right? And there he is. Ooh, the young Thomas Edison with the phonograph. What was the first words? What was the first words in the Thomas Edison? Oh no, I'm thinking Alexander Graham Bell. Come here. What's the name? Come here. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And our final slide of the day. A little entertainment. The business of amusement. So you've got up here the top three guys. Yep, the top three. These are trading cards, like baseball trading cards, except these are circus people. So you've got your acrobats, you've got your super flexible guy. Oh, golly. And then you got your bearded woman. I mean, I bet you those cards are worth a lot of money today. Man. Anyway, let's see. Baseball is going to in the 1880s. It's going to 1870s. Professional league was created in the 1870s. 1880s, 1890s. It's going to become America's pastime, right? And here we have one of the first trading cards for baseball. And look at that action shot. I mean, that's amazing that they were able to capture that guy, about to catch the ball. And then, when you look really close and you see that that ball is actually it's hanging on a string, and he's just standing there with the background. And then you realize, wait, that's right, because in 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, the cameras, their shutter speed, not that fast, and so it just would have been a blur. In fact, I might not have even picked up the baseball at all. I'm going to move on. Anybody recognize this guy? Oh, well, his name's over there, so that's cheating. But James Naismith, right? James Naismith, and he's a Canadian American. He's going to come down to Massachusetts, and he's going to invent the basketball game. He was a coach, like a PE coach, and he's going to invent basketball. He's going to take these peach buckets and cut out the holes, and well, eventually going to cut out the holes. Originally, they didn't have holes. Originally, they had to climb up each time and get the ball out of the bucket, and then ultimately, Naismith is going to he's going to found the basketball program at the University of Kansas. Hey, Big 12, right? And just for funsies, and the very last quick fact is this: that of all of the coaches at the University of Kansas, and you're thinking, wow, KU, they've done pretty good when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Which, by the way, Naismith, he was around when the first tournament was at 1936, 1937, and then he died that year. But Naismith is the only coach in University of Kansas basketball history, the only coach to, that's right, get ready, to have a losing record. Oh man, the founder of basketball has a losing record at the University of Kansas. Awkward. All right, guys. Yeah. All right, guys. I'll see you. Be good.